Good morning, everyone. This is Bill Giannone on behalf of the Crest Network, welcoming you to our Tuesday webinar. Today's webinar is entitled Third Party versus Peer Review, How to Tell the Difference and How to Help Yourself. You know, Crest is primarily a commercial restoration, education, support, and training network, but many times a lot of the tips that Dick and I and Scott will be giving you can apply equally well to commercial and residential. In the case of what we're going to talk about today, there are some differences between how to apply this concept of third party and peer review on a commercial or residential. And what we like to do is to make sure that you can understand the differences when they arise, provide you with some value that you can use as soon as you finish watching this webinar as well. So I'm going to take you down the road a little bit into the commercial side, explain some of the players there, and then delve a little bit deeper into the residential, because all of us are facing this basically every day. I know we've all noticed this, but right now there's a real growing trend that the insurance companies like to get others involved. I mean, I'm joking around here with this photo of the third wheel sitting on the couch drinking a beer with the other two guys, because we're not normally drinking beers with our clients, but it just goes to show you that we take our relationship with our clients very seriously. And a lot of times the adjuster or the insurance company throws in this third wheel, whether it's a TPA company, whether it's a peer review company, whether it's another adjuster. We need to be able to identify a couple of things. We need to be able to know who we're talking to and who can we talk to. Who do we have to talk to? Who can we ignore? And when can we do these things? It's the most important question is really when, because if we choose to ignore somebody and they happen to be a very important part of the process, that could absolutely keep us from getting paid and possibly upset the relationships we have with our clients and our referral sources. So I think it's very important to be able to answer these questions. Before we get into specifically answering these questions, I want to go over a concept that I've been coaching on for many years. Some of you watching this webinar may have already heard some of my conversations about this, but I want to talk to you about something that is prevalent in our industry, and I need for you guys to get a little bit of a mindset in your heads about trying your best not to let this be part of your business model. I refer to it as the great mistake. If you look at this triangle, this represents basically all of our normal work. There are three entities involved. There's always a restoration company, there's always an insurance company. Well, I shouldn't say always, but when there are insurance companies, there's always a company, and then there's the homeowner. The homeowner is really the linchpin here. If you look at the left side of the triangle, you'll see the words work authorization. That is a legal binding document that cements the relationship between ourselves and the homeowner. On the right side, you'll see the words insurance policy. That is a legal binding document that cements the relationship between the insurance company, i.e. the adjuster, and the homeowner as well. The mistake that we all make as restorers is that we want to complete the triangle by putting a connection between ourselves and the insurance company that does not legally exist. I mean, we all have our reasons for doing it. Many times, as a way of trying to close the deal with our clients, we might be a little nervous about whether we can get them on board. We may say things to them like, don't worry about any money. We're going to work with your insurance company. We're going to get money from them. Or, we do this all the time. Don't worry about it. We'll handle all the communications. All of those things are fine and dandy in a world where you are assured you're going to get the money. We know in our world today, we're not ever assured of getting the money. And the problem arises when I talk about legal responsibility. The insurance company must legally speak to and answer the questions of the homeowner. We must legally do our best to work in the homeowner's best interest as well. There is no legal obligation for the insurance company to work with us, to talk with us, or, guys, to even tell us the truth. Yes, insurance companies have lied to us. We believe that in our heart. We have plenty of evidence that proves that point. But that doesn't matter. There is no legal obligation between the carrier and the restoration company. So they're under no obligation to talk with us, to work with us. They love doing so because it's the best opportunity for them to try to get our bill down to a manageable number. Remember, it's very difficult for them to try to adjust our bill if we've gotten paid in full from our homeowner and our homeowner is going to them and saying, here's my bill, here's I paid it, give me my money back. They don't have a lot of leverage like that, so they encourage us talking to them as well. But the responsibility lies with us as restorers to make sure that we are not speaking directly with insurance companies. Instead, we should always involve the homeowner. See the direction of the communication line there? I put an arch because all of our communication should go through the homeowner. Now, I'm not telling you that you should always only talk to the homeowner and totally cut out the adjuster. I don't think that's a reasonable way of doing business in this day and age. I think there has to be open communication. But I'm telling you guys that all of your communications should include the homeowner. You want to keep the homeowner in the loop. You want them on your side. Remember, in most cases of water losses, whether it's residential or commercial, as soon as you show up, the homeowner or the property owner or manager is under an incredible amount of pressure. When we show up and we start doing our work, we're immediately releasing that pressure so they have the bond with us. We need to make sure we can cultivate that bond, continue the trust that's being built all the way through the collections process. We also know that the insurance company is going to be saying things to our client about us, especially if we happen to not be on any kind of programs. They may want to be able to work with somebody on a program who's going to see things their way. So they may be intentionally or unintentionally saying things about us that isn't going to help us. We need to make sure we stay on the homeowner's side when those things occur. Okay, this is a very important concept. Let's avoid making that great mistake on our next project. Let's make all our communications go through the homeowner. If an adjuster calls you, do your best to put them on hold. Try to get the homeowner on the phone so that the homeowner can hear the conversation. If there's an email, when you respond to the email, you respond to the homeowner saying you've been contacted by the adjuster. He asked the following questions. I'm giving you the answers to send. Okay, we're going to discuss some of the techniques that we can use in this communication line later, but just see this vision, compare it to the previous slide here where there's no connection, no communication with the insurance carrier. Now we're showing you in this slide how the communication has to travel through the homeowner. That's how we would prefer it, guys. Okay, let's get on to that third party topic. In the field of commercial restoration, we should always be talking to third parties. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet, especially if you're on any of those Facebook industry pages where there's, guys taking torches wanting to burn down the adjusters' homes. And I know that's very alliterative, and let's just make sure that we keep everything in perspective. On commercial losses, there are a lot of parties involved. There are a lot of different parts to the claim. We happen to be a very small piece of that claim. But it's very important to understand that these third parties that show up on commercial losses have specific duties. They might be people like independent adjusters. Many times on large losses, there could be several different carriers sharing responsibility for the blame and making sure that that money gets paid properly. What they will do is they will collectively hire an independent adjuster to represent all of them collectively. So let's make sure we understand if somebody's an independent adjuster, when they show up on the job, we must communicate with them. Secondly, there are people on this level on the commercial side called third-party administrators, TPAs. This definition is different than the definition of a TPA as we currently know it on the residential side. Residential TPA programs are much more like marketing programs. They're more like business referral programs. We sign up for these programs. We agree to the rules and regulations within the program, mostly how it relates to production and invoicing. And in return, they send us leads. So I call it a lead generation program. On the commercial side, a TPA is not the same thing. Many times commercial properties might be part of a very large policy. For instance, if you take a big box store, they might have billions of dollars of coverage, but they might have a huge deductible, 10, 20, $50 million per year. that has to be calculated and captured and sent to the adjusters, even though no money's coming out of the insurance company's hands. That adjuster still needs to know how close they're getting to the limit. He still needs to adjust the claim, even though that store might be paying the entire bill out of pocket. Well, in this case, there are companies that operate as true third parties that will do the accumulation of data, and they'll put everything together and package the claim for the client, which would be the big box store, present that information to the adjuster and the insurance company, who would be the person responsible ultimately once they reach limits, and all that communication will be there. What ends up happening is a lot of times the TPA fees are covered within the insurance policy, making them truly a third party because they're working on behalf of the property holder, but they're getting paid by the insurance company. So they represent both parties. It's not the same thing as what we're dealing with on residential, guys. When they ask you for information, you want to readily give it to them. They will help package the claim, your invoice being part of that claim. They will help to justify and support your bill as long as you've got great documentation. So they're a very valuable resource for us. Don't think of them the same way. Then you're going to have project consultants. There might be consultants that are hired by the building owner who are industrial hygienists, or they might even be logistics experts. There might be people who are there doing forensic accounting, trying to figure out what the revenue loss would be if we shut down a warehouse or a production facility. Those people need to be communicated with. If somebody comes up to you and has that kind of a title and asks you how long you anticipate your phase of mitigation to take, don't blow them off. Give them that information. It's very important in the large picture, okay? There might even be project consultants sent by the insurance company to kind of look over your shoulder and to talk about what the scope looks like and how you're going to attempt to dry the building. These people have high levels of expertise. They are there as part of the process. They're not there necessarily to beat you up, even though it might feel like that, but they're there to make sure that there is somebody representing the owner and the insurance company, keeping us in check. On large losses, it's very important that you communicate with these people. If you ever expect to get paid, you have to have an open line of communication between yourself, your client, and all of these parties. They have earned a seat at the table just by virtue of how the commercial process works. Do not unilaterally kick them aside. Okay, guys? Really important to understand that. I'm going to go over some of the names of some of these companies. When you see these names or anybody representing them, yes, they're legitimate. Sedgwick is the largest independent adjusting company in the world. They're a big conglomerate that's going around gobbling up a lot of different pieces of the marketplace. If you see anybody from Sedgwick on a project, on a commercial project, they are legitimate. They are very much involved in getting you paid. Make sure you're aware of that. Another company called Engel Martin is one of the largest TPAs. These are those third parties I referred to before who get brought in to basically put all the packaging together and to do all the accounting and keeping track of everything. Very, very important. Many of us have seen the name Crawford through the Crawford Connection, and many of us might even be members of Crawford Connection. Now, that's mostly a residential program, and yes, there are occasions when Crawford Connection will send you into a commercial loss as well. This Crawford I'm referring to is an adjusting side who does a lot of work for AIG and their subsidiaries. AIG and their subsidiaries tend to be the largest commercial insurers. So when we see Crawford, they're really representing AIG. We want to treat them differently than we would if they were just somebody trying to take 6% off of our bill and basically throwing us business. We want to make sure we treat them with a little bit level of respect, knowing that they are part of this process. They are that third chair at the table. Company like JS Held. JS Held is the industry's largest experts. They provide experts all the way from construction management to engineering to forensic accounting. They're brought in by the carriers to do a lot of the legwork and to do a lot of the expert stuff that maybe that adjuster doesn't have a hand on. They will be able to come into a manufacturing facility and help establish what the manufacturing capacity is and whether it makes sense for us to remove machinery or clean it in place. They will be part of those decision-making processes because they have the ability to analyze it both from a time perspective, but also from a financial perspective. So when you see JS held, um, do not run, embrace them. I'm not saying become best friends with them. Understand that they are not working for the client as you are, but they are part of the process. And fighting them will not get you paid. I can promise you that. Between myself and Scott Tarpley, we've been on hundreds of commercial projects over the years when JSL's been involved. For the most part, we've always felt that having a working relationship with them and keeping them in the loop has helped our client and has helped getting our clients paid as well. So we want to make sure we do that. Finally, I want to point out another company in the same field called Young and Associates. They tend to be more on the forensic and the audit side than they are on the scope side. So you might not see these guys show up until somewhere into the job, or they might not even show up till after you've created your invoice, and they'll be doing some review. They are not necessarily third-party review companies. They're part of this process. They just serve different duties. So these are names that you're going to see a lot on the commercial side. Please make sure that you don't unilaterally just close the door on them and say, no, this is between me and my client. If you really want to service your client, understand that your mitigation portion of that loss that your client's going through ends up in the grand scheme of things to be a very small portion of what your client's dealing with. Okay? Help your client by working with these people. On the residential side, my answer, it can't be a simple yes or no. My answer, and most of you hate this answer when you hear it, but the answer is it depends. There are several different factors that we have to account for before we can make our decision. But we're going to really simplify it and limit it down. Here's the easy part. If the third party is acting as the adjuster on behalf of the carrier, then yes, you should communicate with him. It's very simple. You ask one question to whoever this third party is. You say to them, are you acting as the named adjuster on this claim? That's all you say. I'll repeat it again. Are you acting as the named adjuster on this claim? If their answer is not yes, they are not this adjuster, they are doing something else, then I think we move into the not so easy category. If you get an answer of yes, work with them. They are the one who's going to cut the check. So you want to get your money out of your client, work with them. If they don't give you that answer, then there's almost a really, really 100% chance that they are what we call peer review companies. They are not to be talked to. You should avoid all communication with these companies. All of your communication should always be between you, your client, and the adjuster, always remembering to leave the homeowner, your client, in the middle. Okay? Why do we want to avoid project consultants or peer review companies? Well, I think we understand that for many of us who have ever dealt with these companies, their sole purpose is to beat up our invoice. Adjuster's sole purpose is not to beat up our invoice, guys. Adjuster's sole purpose is to make sure that all of the checks they write can be justified and explained. So what they're doing is they're hiring these outside companies to do all the beating up, knowing that no matter what the result is, they can justify the expense by saying, well, we hired an expert who walked us through it. Okay? We want to make sure we avoid allowing somebody to beat us up. So I'm going to point out some companies that we're going to talk about, and I want you to avoid these companies. Now, remember, these companies in and of themselves are providing a service in our industry. I'm not going to say anything bad about them other than to explain how their interests do not align with our interest or the interest of your client, okay? So I want to make that really clear. We're going to start with Code Blue. They are the biggest company doing peer review. They are, I mean, they call themselves audit companies, invoice audit companies, but they're really doing review. And we want to avoid communicating with them. We don't want to give them the ability to have a seat at the table. Okay, let's read directly from their website. It specifically says, and these are direct quotes from the codeblue360.com website, 20% savings guaranteed. How does a minimum of 20% severity reduction and more policy renewals sound to you? Well, the second that they're talking about policy renewals, we know that they're asking this question to insurance companies. I don't know if you know this, guys, but the structure of an insurance company is very, very odd. We think that they're just swimming in cash, which they do have a lot of available cash. And you'll hear on the news sometimes when people want to beat up insurance companies just how much money they're making off of everybody's backs. Well, the truth is that insurance companies don't make a huge, huge profit for the amount of money that comes in and out. But if you did some math, all of the insurance company profit comes through the act of renewing a policy. In order to get a policy for the first time, the insurance company spends an awful lot of time and effort building and developing relationships with clients, and then going out and building and developing the specific policy for that client. Then, that first commission year, most of the money goes towards paying commissions out from the premium. So there's very little money that the company itself gets to keep from that first year. But then every year, we all know this, we buy insurance for our cars or our homes and our health every year. Very likely, most of us just get an automatic renewal in the mail and we're told by our broker, oh, yeah, everything stayed the same. Well, how much work did your broker actually do now to generate that next year's pay, which is almost always higher than the previous year? Very little. So remember, the renewal part of the policy is where companies make all their money. So when we see Code Blue trying to pitch the idea of more policy renewals, that's a trigger for us to know that they're promising their insurance clients more money in their pockets. And they're saying 20% savings guarantee. So they're promising that your invoice is going to go down 20%. That's where they're going to get the savings from. So where is that money coming from? Are we paying our technicians 20% less? Are we paying our materials suppliers 20% less? Absolutely not. Are we paying our rent 20% less? No, all of that 20% is coming directly out of the owner's pockets. That's your money that they're promising. So why in the world would we want to talk to these companies? Okay. The next company I want to point to is another behemoth. This is Wardlaw. Wardlaw uses a slightly different methodology, but let's read what they have on their website. Wardlaw leads the P&C, which is property and casualty, that's homes, industry in managing claims better, faster, and more specialized. Let's break that part of the sentence down first. They lead this industry in managing claims. They call it claims management. They're reviewing the invoices, getting them lower. So they're trying to do it faster, better, and more specialized. The faster and better is trying to take the pressure away from the adjuster so that these claims don't stay open for long periods of time. The more specialized is kind of like a dog whistle, letting them know that we know how to beat up contractors. Okay? Ensuring peace of mind for our clients and their policyholders after a loss. Once again, when they're referring to our clients and their policyholders, the words our clients are insurance companies. We have clients, but we don't have policyholders. So they would not be working for us, they're working for the insurance company. And then it specifically says, even in even greater specificity, we partner with experienced and loyal adjusters whom we know, trust, and support. Meaning we know what game the adjusters are playing and we're going to play along with them. In fact, what Wardlaw does is they actually use algorithms. They identify areas within our invoices that most of us have every single invoice, including these lines, and they try to attacking those. Think about sometimes when even adjusters have turned around to you and said, oh, we're not paying for your emergency service call anymore, or we're not paying for PPE on Cat 1, or you can't put a scrubber on a Cat 1. All of those denials all come, believe it or not, from Wardlaw doing the research, knowing that those are weak spots for us and that there are many restorers who, in their excitement or desperation to get paid, will give in on these line items. So after years and years, Wardlaw knows where the weak spots are in our industry and they exploit it. They then let the insurance company know where those weak spots are in hopes of trying to get more business from them. And the insurance companies then, even when they're acting on their own, will use that same thing. So what they do is they create that false narrative about what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. So let's avoid that as well if we can. The third one is Vericlaim. Now, before I spoke about a very large company called Sedgwick, many of you may not know this, but Sedgwick is a behemoth partly because they are going around buying up other companies. Well, they own a company called Vericlaim. Vericlaim does a ton of review, invoice review. Let's go back on their website again. Let us support the accuracy and efficiency of your repair process. These are key words. We identify leakage on over 90% of assignments. They refer to leakage as overbilling or superfluous line items or prices. That's what they call leakage. So they're saying when we submit a full invoice that we are actually overbilling, and they call it leakage. Next sentence. The average claim leakage found by our team for mitigation services, scoping errors, and overbilling is 21%. Isn't it amazing that their number is 21%? And if we went all the way back to Code Blue, their number was 20%. Pretty crazy, isn't it? In 36 months, Sedgwick's auditors recovered $12.54 million in leakage across 46 states. They word it that way to show that everybody in our industry is doing it. That's what they're insinuating, that 46 states, meaning everybody's doing it. It's not localized to one particular region of quote unquote crooks. But look at that number at the very end in parentheses. $1,479 is what their average cut from a restorer is. Think about how many jobs you're doing. If you are doing 10 jobs a month, they're cutting almost $180,000 out of your pocket. So on 10 jobs a month, they're taking $180,000 out of your pocket. How many of you did 10 jobs, 20 jobs, 30 jobs a month last year? Could you have made a profit if they were taking out $15,000 a month for every 10 jobs you did? I venture to say that almost nobody listening to my voice would be able to say that they made a profit in spite of something like that. So let's understand just how severe these attacks are, and let's make sure we're armed with information. Okay? Let me give you some examples of some other parties that are peer review third parties. There are companies out there. TradePro is a up-and-coming company out of Tennessee. They just so happen to be located in the very same town where ServPro is located. So TradePro, who started their business as a flooring company, is now out there reviewing invoices. They've started on the commercial side, but you might start seeing them more and more on the residential side as well. Rytech, many of us have had exposure to. Rytech is a very aggressive third-party peer review company. RMC Group is an up-and-comer as well. You might not be too familiar with them, but these companies all do the same thing. They have experts that they hire to look at your invoice, and they look at it with a fine-tooth comb, and they use a lot of terminology that kind of looks like it lines up with what the insurance policies say. They use words like fair and reasonable, average, customary, traditional, normal. They'll use words like that when they're doing review. So if you happen to be a company that goes above and beyond and does the right thing and follows the S500 to the letter of the law, remember, it's very difficult at that point because many of our competitors and fellow restorers don't do that. So these companies come across all sorts of invoices. They're always going to try to call what's normal or what's fair and reasonable something that may not be to the level of what you're doing. So your responses always have to be lined up with, well, here's what we do. And when you're responding, once again, we're not responding to these parties. We're talking to the adjuster. We're making sure that we're going to say, well, here's what we do because we follow the standard and we do this and we do that. And our techs are certified and trained and we pay them higher. So our labor rates are slightly higher. There are lots of answers. I've got many of them for you on our website if you need them. But just understand that this is a very important part of the process to know why and how they're doing it. I'm going to add a few names on this slide. You just saw 4 names pop up, 3 of which are very large franchises within our industry, and the 4th is the largest commercial restorer in the country, or actually probably in the world, Belfour. Let's take a look at these. ServPro, PureClean, and Paul Davis All our franchise operations, they all have relationships right now with a lot of the carriers by virtue of the fact that many franchises at the corporate level have corporate relationships where they want to be on the programs and they want to be preferred vendors. So part of the service that they provide to these carriers is from time to time when the carrier asks for a comparison estimate or a peer review, what they'll do is they'll go to these companies and ask them to provide them with this service. And these companies will do that because they understand that it's a good two-way relationship for them to have with the restorers and adjusters. So they will provide their form of a peer review. And we all know that if we are a company who's doing everything to the nines, it doesn't matter who they bring out. A lot of other companies are not going to write the same way we write. And we also know that if somebody hires you, you always want to make them happy. So it's probably not in anybody's best interest to write anything to the level that we would be executing or writing it at ourselves. Now, mind you, I want to be careful here. I never advocate putting anything on your invoice that you haven't done. And I never advocate on doing more than you need to do. I always have an expression, bill for every penny that you have earned and not a penny more. So I don't believe in putting 20 air movers in a house that requires 10. Let's put the 10 in, but let's make sure we put all 10 in and let's bill for 10. Let's not work out, oh, I put 10 in, but I'm only going to charge you for 6. Let's make sure we follow to the letter of the law. Let's follow the standards, let's follow good practices, and let's follow the safety and security for our client. Okay? Belfour, once again, they are so large and so powerful that many times they will be brought in to be the big swinging hammer because they are so powerful. A lot of guys who are residential restorers understand who Belfour is and understand their power, and just their mere presence causes our guys to not stand up for what they believe in. So we always want to make sure that you support everything that you do. We're going to now talk about a couple of rules on how to avoid these third parties, and I call them the just say no rules. Rule number one under the just say no is always communicate through your client. Remember, guys, no matter what we believe or no matter what anybody tries to tell us, at the end of the day, our contract is between ourselves and the property holder or the homeowner. They are ultimately responsible for payment. If we are helping them communicate to their insurance company for purposes of getting us paid, that's fine. That's a decision we make as restorers. But ultimately, they're responsible. If they are responsible, it's your obligation to make sure that all communication goes through them. They need to be kept up to date of everything that's going on that project. The worst possible thing to do is tell them nothing and then give them a bill that blows their mind at the end of the project, because now you've lost their ability to support you should any questions arise after you've submitted your invoice. So keep them in the loop, and all communications must include them, okay? Rule number 2 on the just say no list of rules is never speak directly to peer review. You're not obligated to speak to these companies. They're hired specifically by the adjusters or the insurance companies with one purpose, just to lower your invoice. So don't help them. Does this mean that you don't ever have to answer their questions? No, it does not. You're still obligated to answer their questions, because if you don't, the adjuster will then say, well, since you didn't even answer the questions, I'm just going to listen to what they say. And we don't want to put ourselves in that position. So let's make sure we are going to answer the questions, but we're going to answer them to the homeowner, addressing the homeowner to then give those answers to the adjuster. Okay, that takes us to rule 3. All answers to any questions go through your client. Provide any and all answers to the questions coming from the third party, but give the answers to your client. Have them forward the responses to their adjuster. So now you are eliminating the communication portion of the third party. You're making sure the adjuster understands you're only referring to the adjuster, not to his third party. And you're keeping your client in the loop, which is doing the best that you can to keep them on your side and to keep your chances of getting paid high. So let's make sure we do that. Don't acknowledge their existence, but make sure you respond to your client. Very important. The final rule, rule 4, defend your invoice. Nothing bothers me more, guys, than a company that puts in so much time and effort in establishing a good process for execution, establishing an open line of communication, establishing a fair and accurate invoicing process. And then the second that they're confronted with questions or concerns about their invoice, they cave like a cheap suit and they just take whatever the adjuster wants to give them. You need to understand the value of your services is high. You have worked for those services and you deserve the money. Don't be intimidated. It's very important. To that end, when we refer to our invoice, we never want to refer to the Xactimate as an estimate. That's one of the cardinal sins we make. If we are dealing with repairs, if we're dealing with bid work, we will put something together in Xactimate that approximates what we think will be done. That is called an estimate. It's subject to negotiation, alteration, and final agreement. If we have already done all the work and we are using our invoice as a way just to compilate all of the information and compile, sorry for that bad word, compile all the information and prove and document everything we've done, it is not an estimate. It is an invoice, or it is a line item detailed documentation of your invoice. Again, most companies will create an invoice in QuickBooks so that their books line up. And then the supporting Xactimate is not an estimate. When the adjuster wants to talk to you about your estimate, you never refer to it as an estimate. Refer to it as your Xactimate or your line item documentation. Don't call it an estimate. I know it's semantics, guys, but there is a difference. On this sheet, I wanted to put up something that's kind of like a template that I use for a lot of our clients here at the Crest Network. And I wanted to show it to you because this is language that you can use should one of these peer review or third parties want to get involved in your project. This again is residential. So it starts off Ms. Smith, and obviously we're going to put in whatever the name of the client is there. I wanted to let you know that I have received correspondence from a third-party company, hired by your insurance carrier, in regards to the invoice that I submitted to you for the work performed on your property. Let's take this sentence by sentence again. Ms. Smith, and I make it very personal. The person writing this letter should be the person who has the communication going on with Ms. Smith. In some companies, that might be the salesman, the first responder. In other companies, it might be the project manager. In some companies, it might be the crew chief. In other companies, yet it might still be the owner who does all the communications. So we want to make sure that the person who has the relationship going on with the homeowner is the person who's communicating. To me, that's a very, very important aspect of this process. Remember, I said to you before, when we talk to our client, we want to build that level of trust. We want to be overly communicative with them. Part of what we want to do is we want to set them up for what's going to happen going forward when we submit our invoice. Part of what we can do is we can coach our client to know, hey, there's a really good chance that your insurance company is going to hire somebody whose sole purpose it is to cut our bill. I promise you this is what they're going to do, and then they're going to come and ask me a whole bunch of crazy questions. You see how hard we're working here, right, Ms. Smith? You understand the value we're providing to you, right, Ms. Smith? Well, they're going to say that we don't deserve to get paid for that. So I just want to let you know that. Guess what's going to happen? When you send this email over to her after you've gotten that communication, she's going to go, oh my God, that's exactly what you said was going to happen. And then you're going to say, yes, it is. Now we're going to do what you said you were going to do, and you're going to help me. So this is how we help the client get us paid. Okay. We want to make sure, so we are always referring to, I wanted to let you know that I have received and that I submitted the invoice to you. So that's important. We use the I there. I just wanted to point that out. And then I also say that the third party was hired by your carrier. I want to make sure that they understand this isn't an independent person, that there's a purpose here, there's a goal. Next sentence. Please note that, as I previously explained to you, because we had that conversation, They have been brought into your claim for the sole purpose of lowering our invoice. They may claim that they're doing an audit, but remember, if we communicate with our client, we're going to tell the client, maybe the client can be the one to ask the insurance company, how many times has your third party ever come back to you and told you that the bill is too low? If it was an audit, they would have to have one or two of those every 10 or 20 times. But no, it's always they're cutting the bill, and they're always cutting the bill significantly. So we know that our purpose is correct. They have requested information from me about your loss. Since I value our relationship and the sanctity of our agreement, which is that work authorization, I cannot communicate with this party about anything related to your loss. We're making a statement there that we value the work authorization. The only person that the homeowner usually gives us permission to talk to is the adjuster. Anybody outside of that is outside of our agreement with our homeowner. Most of us get an authorization to discuss the claim with the adjuster. I love that, and I love the fact that that does not carry over to anybody else, only the adjuster. Remember way back when I said the question you have to ask the third party as soon as they call you is, are you acting as the named adjuster? If they are, you have an obligation to talk to them to help out your client. If they're not, this is why it matters. Please advise your adjuster that I've responded to their questions directly to you for you to provide them to the adjuster, but I will not be working with anyone else regarding my invoice. Once again, I'm referring to it as an invoice, not an estimate, and I've provided the answer, so I'm not trying to stonewall or I'm not trying to be the person who slows up the process. I'm just not acknowledging or communicating with that third party. As a courtesy to you, I have included your adjuster on this email. This is really key, guys. This is how this should happen on every piece of communication. Even when the adjuster sends you an email directly, your response should be to Ms. Smith, CCing the adjuster. But address everything to Ms. Smith and then tell Ms. Smith you've also attached the adjuster. Now, the adjuster knows Ms. Smith is in the loop, so he can't play games. Ms. Smith knows that the adjuster is aware of everything, so she understands that things should be moving along. And even better, every once in a while, Ms. Smith might be really busy, and she might not have had the time to independently forward it to the adjuster by herself because maybe her urgency to get you paid might not be the same as yours. So we're taking that out of the equation. We are CCing the adjuster, but I don't call that direct communication because everything's being addressed to the homeowner. Once again, thank you for your assistance in this process, and thank you for trusting our company with your home. That last sentence could be however you want it to be, whatever you have a tagline for, you can put that on there. I just want you to understand how important it is for this process to make sure that you are on top of things and making sure that you are communicating exactly as we want to through this process. Does everybody understand this? If you don't, or if you have any questions, or if you want a copy of this, obviously you can freeze the slide and you can type it out. Or if you want, drop me an email or drop me a text message, and I'll be glad to forward this on to you. I can forward this slide directly to you. On behalf of Dick Wagner, I really want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank you for being part of the Crest Network, and we look forward to many more Tuesday mornings, and hopefully you guys will have a great day and a great end of the week. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day. Bye-bye.